Hello, everyone. Big thank you to everyone who is on time. And we're about to start our webinar. This is a weekend webinar on the topic of how do you move on from your strategy to developing actionable OKRs? This is one of those rare occasions when the topic fits in one line, but it's actually so complicated that we have a lot of questions almost every day coming to our inbox and in the chats that we are receiving in the coaching team. So if you're coming to this webinar with questions of your own, take this time that I'm doing this intro. It's going to be very short, but take this time to add your questions to the existing Q&A block in Zoom. So just a few words before we begin the webinar and Richard starts telling you all of the insights that we'd like to share with you today. A few housekeeping items. The first one, you will receive this recording within 24 hours after this webinar. So don't worry, focus on maybe writing down some notes and getting to your questions. Take this opportunity to really think through how you can use this knowledge in your own team and rather ask more questions as much as you can during the live Q&A that we will have after the session. We will be monitoring the questions in the Q&A chat. We have today here the Weekend team, and please make sure when you hover over your window or the Zoom window, you have the chat box and you also have a Q&A box. For questions, please use the Q&A box, not the chat one. We'll use chat for other things. We'll be sharing some resources and some additional links with you during the webinar, depending on what kind of questions we receive and who we will have in the audience today, right? So in a few moments, Richard will start the poll, and please answer the question. It's all about what's your role in implementing OKRs. You should be seeing it on the screen. This poll will help us to moderate our Q&A session a little bit better. And like I said, at the end of this webinar, we will have the live Q&A. So do take this opportunity to ask as many questions as you have. Also, if you have any ideas or any thoughts for webinar topics, something that you would like your team to watch or that you would like personally to learn, we do have a lot of content and a lot of materials that we're happy to share. It's a matter of choosing the right topic that would interest you. So if you have any ideas, feel free to add them in the chat or reach out to us afterwards. A few words about Richard, your speaker for today's webinar. Richard is leading the customer success and sales team here at Weekend. He's also leading the OKR coaching team here at Weekend. So he has a lot of experience, more than 15 years of experience dealing with developing strategy, change management initiatives, and this is a great opportunity to ask your questions to a person who actually is doing it every single day for many years. So there will be a lot of examples in this webinar, and also you may find these examples either very relatable, somewhat relatable, or not relatable. And if your business is very special and somewhat unique, feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A because we will try to cover as much as possible within the hour of today's session. So I think we're done with the housekeeping and organizational stuff. So take it away, Richard. Have a great webinar.
Super. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, everybody, for starting to answer the survey, the poll. I can see it's starting to take shape there. I will share it a bit later as we go through the webinar. So what are we going to cover today? Basically, what is strategy, what it needs to cover, how to set the OKR hierarchy to align the improvements. How do we come from strategy to setting OKRs and aligning those OKRs over an organization? How do we set company, department, team levels for aligning and for the OKR development? We're also going to cover at the end a little bit about cross-functional OKRs. It's a very, very common question we get asked, especially with people first starting out. And a lot of times people can get confused or lost and misunderstand the point of using cross-functional, cross-team OKRs and what is the difference and how to use them. We'll quickly summarize it, and then, as Anna mentioned, we'll be on to the questions. So if you've got questions, you can ask them in the Q&A section of Zoom. We will answer them as we're going along. But what we intend to do is kind of collate the most common types of questions, and we'll cover them live at the end. So let's get started. For many of us, running a business, we have a vision, mission, and a strategy that we want to develop. And vision, mission are often a 5 or 10 year, can even be even longer in terms of a long-term vision of where we want our business to go. Often strategy is a little bit nearer term, but still it might be 2, 3, 5 years out, or a wide view of what we want to achieve. OKRs are typically annual and quarterly, and I'll come on to what I mean by annual and quarterly later on. But let's come back to strategy. What is strategy? And certainly one of the issues is it's many things. And if you go out to the internet, you'll see a lot of different definitions of strategy. I have my opinion on what's a good way to build strategy, but what amazed me is when I was going out and just doing some searches, how many different pieces of advice you could get on strategy. Quite staggering. But what is strategy? Well, really, it drives two main areas: where to play, where is our business trying to operate, and how are we trying to win. The how to win is very general, and it's typically around, the strategy around price, products, services, customer fit, which customers, regions we're targeting. As we move further down, we move to tactics. So specifically, what will we put into action to implement the strategy? How do we make our strategy come true? And that really fits into the how to win. Now, strategy sets direction, outlines where to play, how to win, but it also changes in timeframes. What you can see here, as we said earlier, 2, 3, 5 years for your strategy. We really need to take it from strategy to building a strategy roadmap. How are we going to take from that 5-year horizon, 4, 3, take it down to directional and actionable objectives to this yearly and quarterly area? It's really about moving from the strategy to the tactics and making the strategy happen. And that's what we're really going to discuss today, is how to do that in a practical manner. What I'm going to use for this is one strategy model I personally like, which is actually nothing to do with me. It's to do with Roger Martin, who's written a lot on strategy. But here's why I like this model and why I'll use it in this example. I think the way this splits out strategy, it's very easy to understand. So where to play, where are we going to play, and how we're going to win? I mentioned those earlier. But for any business, they're relatively easily to write down. We know where we are now. Where are we currently selling? What is our target audience? And we hopefully are winning some business, or we intend to win some business, and we know how we're going to do that. Even if we haven't started, we're very early stage, we could complete those areas. If we're a developed business, we could also develop these. Now, what the strategy is really talking about is the future. So we need to think about these, where to play and how to win, and how they might change in the future. I think what this also does is it allows you to start at 2 points there and work up to develop a winning inspiration, and down to the capabilities and management systems you need. The capabilities and management systems are where we will actually develop the business. What are the things we need to develop our business? So it helps you put all the items in the right places and helps you develop a strategy. And what we're going to do, we're going to actually do an example here. And I decided this time to do a slightly unusual example. We said, okay, let's say we're a business school based in Europe. We're a successful business school that has been focusing on educating entrepreneurs. That's where we are. That's where we're playing. Europe and entrepreneurs, and educating them is the area. We are looking to expand to Asia and Africa. So the future expansion or growth of this business school, we're looking to Asia and Africa. And after that, maybe Americas, where we know it's maybe more competitive for business education. So we're going to start in the areas we believe we can get up and running quicker, and then we can move on to other geographic regions. How to win? Well, we think we have a unique curriculum. We have skilled lecturers and a great track record of success for graduates. So we've got a history. We can tell people about our history, and that's how we believe we're going to win. We also see that our price and costs are competitive with the US dominant players. So we're trying to make sure we are maybe a little bit keener priced, but our costs are also lower, so we will be financially stable. Now, just with those two areas, I can now come back to a winning aspiration, which is about us being the leading education establishment for entrepreneurs, with innovative courses that teach the latest tools and methods. So we're trying to make sure that we're never static. We're always improving. We would then work down capabilities. So what do we need? Well, maybe when we're in Europe, we had a great word of mouth. We did some marketing, but now we're really going to have to step that up. We're going to have to improve our marketing and our marketing abilities to get known outside Europe. We're going to have to manage the courses and payment systems better. Maybe it was okay when there was fewer courses and less paying attendees, that we could manage it manually. But as we try to expand, we know we've got to keep the costs under control. So we need these capabilities, and that folds into the management system of having maybe transparent measurements to drive improvements. We've got to be able to recruit, and we've got to have admin processes that can scale with low management overhead. So that's how we're kind of building it. Now, this is unlikely to stay the same forever. We can go back, and the arrows kind of show the flow where you start winning aspiration down to where to play, how to win capabilities and management systems. But you also see the flowing back up again. And if I change something, maybe the market changes and we change how to win or where we need to play, that we decide Asia is okay or Africa's better, or maybe we decide to change that we're going to now go to America before one of the others. What it does, it allows me to make changes in any one of these segments, but then rethink how does it affect the others. And it's a great way to get you started. It's a great way to put the right pieces of a strategy together and drive thinking and understanding of what we need to get done. Now, strategy, as we said, might be a 2, 3, 4, 5 year horizon. And we've really got to break it down into the roadmap. We've got to say, what are we going to focus on year 1, year 2, year 3? Doesn't have to be in huge detail, but we have to logically put the pieces together. Now, what we have decided is, and we've said, right, the first thing we need to do is get recognized in Southeast Asia, Middle East. We need the learning management and delivery systems in place so we can scale. And we need to get our Southeast Asian Learning Center open and revenue generating. We kind of picked just 3 major areas for year 1, and we may well then plot out the future years. Year 2, get recognized in sub-Saharan Africa, recruit star lecturers for the regions, and get our first Middle East and African learning centers generating revenue. Year 4, we might decide, okay, we're going to expand it to China, but for that, we're going to need to develop the courses in Chinese language and the marketing in Chinese language. And that might be quite a big expense and a lot of time and effort for us. And then we might be looking to expand a second learning center in Africa. So we've kind of taken from the capabilities and what we're trying to achieve from where to play and how to win, and the capabilities and management systems, and we put the areas we need to focus on year. Now, it's quite common to think about just three major areas. A lot of times in strategy, trying to think through what you can really achieve, it also, in a sense, has to relate to budgets as well. Do we have the money to expand and do those things? So we've got year one, and let's take year one and say, well, how do we take that year one and how do we break it down into the quarterly focuses? So basically, I want to be able to have a yearly objectives broken down into quarterly objectives. Still, these are setting the direction for the company. And quarter one objectives, how can we build a cost-effective marketing solution to develop awareness in Southeast Asia? What do we need to consider when choosing a learning platform? In quarter two, can we use the approach to develop the awareness in the Middle East? So basically, we're going to test it out on a limited area in Asia, and then we're going to understand whether we can use the same methods within another geographic region. We're also going to, in quarter two, we should have moved from choosing the learning management system, how we're going to share the courses and the curriculum, and make sure that we can implement it and adopt it in a cost-effective manner. How will we manage the tuition and billing is also something we need to be thinking about. We need to make it, and one of our constraints is we need to make it efficient and scalable. Quarter three, what do we need to consider successful academy operation to drive revenues? So this quarter three is where we're going to be starting to think about delivering the Southeast Asian Learning Centre. That's where we're probably going to be. Now, we might go on to Q4, but these are broad, general, generic in a wet sense. They're still quite broad in what we're plotting out here. It might be that quarter one takes us longer to develop the cost-effective solutions or develop awareness, or things can change and move, and we haven't spent a huge amount of time developing it yet. We're now going to take it and try to develop it into achieving our first quarter's objectives. The way we're going to, well, one thing just to mention before that is, when you're rolling out annual and even quarterly company objectives, these quarterly objectives need to be understood. They need to be something the teams, or at least the team management, department management, connect with. What that means is discussing often what are our yearly objectives, what are our quarter one objectives. You might not share the quarter out objectives. You might just, first of all, start with a quarter one. But often discussing it with a level below leadership is quite critical to make sure people agree with the direction we're going, that we have buy-in, that people understand where we're going and understand what it means. Now, for those of you that have been on webinars we've done before, this is a diagram we commonly use, and we talk about vision, mission, strategy to company objectives. What we've been doing, we've been working for strategy roadmap, and developing the company objectives. We've been breaking down that multi-year strategy into a roadmap that brings us to company objectives that are annual and quarterly. And those are the annual, can we promote value through our marketing ourselves as entrepreneurial education leaders? And that was one of them. That's slightly different to above, because we will start to develop better wording. We will start to try to make them a little bit more inspirational as we go along. We have learning and management systems in place that are efficient and allow data-driven decisions. And the last one was successful at launching the Academy in Asia, staffed and delivering revenues. Great. That's our annuals. But now we need to bring it down to the quarters. The reason we're going to set the quarters is to make sure we can align further down the company with a clear quarterly direction. In this first case, the annual objective is broken out into quarter one, develop recognition in Southeast Asia. Annual objective 2, we have learning and management systems in place that are efficiently allowing data-driven decisions. Is really in Q1, we need to find the right learning management system that meets our needs. We need to get that done so we can start to build it out and start to use it to expand geographically. The third objective, though, was all about the actual opening of the Academy in Asia, staff delivering revenues. It's not for Q1. In fact, that might not be touched until Q3, which is fine. It's there because it's one of our major annual objectives, but we kind of know what the timing is going to be on that. Now, in this particular case, and it's not always the case, we have an annual objective, promote the value through marketing ourselves and entrepreneurial education leaders, and Q1 objective of developing the recognition in Southeast Asia is actually going to align with the marketing department in the example I've got here. And that marketing department has a public relations, social media and content marketing teams under the department leadership. The second one, finding the right learning system that meets our needs, is going to be driven by the technology team. They're going to run the lead on finding the right solution that would work for us technically. Now, that means we're going to take the Q1, develop the recognition in Southeast Asia. And in this case, where we have departments and teams, in this example, I'm going to do it with a second aligned objective. So the marketing department leader has come up and said, well, let's set a cost-effective marketing campaigns that get traction in Southeast Asia. He's probably put more details around the cost-effective and traction. What does the marketing leadership think are the right costs and traction that we should be getting? There'll be more context in there, and they'll be sharing more context with the teams to allow the teams to build a good OKR for each of the different elements of marketing there. Let's go in and look at what they set up. So the cost-effective marketing campaigns that get traction, the public relations team has said, okay, we have an O, driving visibility at events and media, and they have 2 key results: attend 2 education events and get 50 prospect students. Second KR, publish 3 adverts in traditional media that deliver 10,000 visits to the web landing page. These both are not about attending the events or publishing, it's about what do we get out of that. So we're trying to get an outcome of 50 prospective students or 10,000 visits. So people see the media advertising and they go to our web landing page, which we've set up so we can count how many come from these adverts. And that's the outcome we're looking for. Now, we go through the other teams, the social media team. They do the same. They have decided that they want to test campaigns to see which channels deliver in Southeast Asia. And they think the best bet is Facebook and Instagram. They've set up a Facebook campaign and the aim is to get 2,000 followers. The Instagram campaign is to get over 1,000 impressions and a 20% click-through rate. So we've set some measurable outcomes for the social media team. Content marketing, very, very similar again. Publish 6 personal success stories on our alumni that get views over 100,000. So we have, and we mentioned before, we have a great history of people that have been to this education institute and have been successful. So we're going to use that to get recognition. But again, it's not about what we publish. It only counts if people see it, if we get views. Research articles also, so we can share with subject matter experts, and again, measured by views. And we're also looking to get a certain number of views to main landing page conversion. So we're looking to get interest from people to come to our website. Again, we would have a landing page somewhere we can measure how many are coming from these areas. So what we've basically got is a good set of team OKRs for the 3 teams under marketing that are aligning with the team objective. Now, the second one here, this is a simpler one where we've got find a right learning system that meets our needs, and it's just going to be worked on with the technology team. The technology team has come up with a way of kind of saying, well, let's make get at least a list of 10 learning management systems, select the top 3 and have it demonstrated to the decision team. Now, technology team is leading this OKR, but as quite often when we're making a big decision like this, there'll be other teams and departments that have a say in the system. So the technology team is going to get the demonstrations of the ones we believe are going to fit technically, and then the decision team will review that. We'll also get 3 references to make sure we actually hear from real customers and understand what works. It's a major decision for us. Great. We've now built out, we've got annual and quarterly company objectives. We have a marketing department alignment objective, and we have team OKRs, which are going to drive the actual change. There are other ways to do it where you have company, department, and teams. You can, in some cases, have departmental OKRs, and the teams, multiple teams under that are all working on those. There is different ways to do it. It depends what works best for the team and your business. I want to come back to this tech team example, because often when you're trying to develop OKRs, it's not that you actually can get from the objective to directly the key results. Maybe this team actually started by thinking about, what are we going to do? What are the initiatives, projects, plans that lead up to the objective? What they might have come up with is actually started with the objective, and they might have actually come up and said, well, we need to develop success criteria for the decision team. We need to evaluate the systems available on shortlists. I need to maybe read as many articles as I could find on LMS, educate myself to make sure I know what the key points are for making the decisions. We also need to think about the billing and integration capability. We said that was something that was important to us to make it work well. Now, it could be from an objective, we came to the initiatives, plans, projects type area, and then back to develop the key results, or we can develop key results and come down to the initiatives. However, in a way, you need both. OKRs without an understanding of how we're going to drive its success, or measures of projects, but without any outcome measures, key results of what success looks like, doesn't work. So we need to think about both when we're developing it. The execution elements, the plans, projects drive the key result outcomes, in a sense that doing these should drive those forward if they're done well. I want to come on to cross-functional alignment and what is it, because one of the things we often hear, especially with new customers, is they've read something about OKRs are great for cross-function, and people believe that means connecting everything to everything, and it's not what it really means. There's multiple levels for understanding cross-functional. The simple one is, if I had 2 teams with 2 OKRs, if they both understood each other's OKRs, they could understand, are we working in a similar direction? Are we, or could we be conflicting with each other? So the first level of alignment, apart from the up-down alignment in the organization, is making sure that, so let's say my sales team OKRs aren't conflicting with the technology team's OKRs. Are we aligned in understanding of what needs to get done? There is the other one, which is the technology team needs, or the sales team needs something from the technology team. And it's where maybe initiatives, plans, projects, something needs to be done for the sales team. Now, an initiative, plan, project is smaller than an OKR, so it doesn't have to be an OKR that's cross-aligned. The last example is where, for the sales team to be successful, the technology team has an OKR that's aligned and linked to the sales team's OKR. That is probably the rarest occasion. That's where the technology team has a major project or major outcome they're trying to drive with initiatives, plans, projects to drive it that is aligned with another team's success as well. It is possible. All three could be there, but these are completely different from cross-functional teams, where we might take individuals from different areas and put them into a single team, often to fix a major company improvement. Might be where we need somebody from product, marketing, sales, and leadership all in one team to make a major directional change in our business. That's where cross-functional teams come in, where we set OKRs to drive major changes across the business, where we need individuals from the different teams to contribute and help get us there. The big thing is often that the simplest alignment is often the best to focus teams on their OKR. Making your alignment too complicated actually usually doesn't help you, and particularly at the beginning. At the beginning, we would tend to recommend just the two ways. Team A contributes, or Team B contributes to Team A's OKRs through initiatives, plans, projects. The other one is, if you need to, create a cross-functional team with OKRs, where we take, for example, marketing, design, and product, and we put a subset of people from those teams together to work on OKRs. So we get the different disciplines working together. At the first start, those two are the best ways to go. They are the ways to have the simplest alignment. And keeping things simple is key for accountability. Now, just to summarize this, so strategy, I use a method I like from Roger Martin. There are other methods out there. I think whatever you use is fine, but you need to build your strategy. We need to build the strategy before we start planning. The strategy map or strategy roadmap and objectives are separate and different, and we need to follow them through in a logical order. One thing we quite often see in Week Done is we see people with a very long kind of business plan in a Word document, and it has bits of strategy, bits of roadmap, strategy roadmap, some objectives, and then thrown in there as KPIs, budgets, and a multitude of things. Seems very logically laid out, but it's often very hard to unpiece it and unpick it. And often starting from the strategy and working down the strategy roadmap, working to the objectives for OKRs that are created from strategy is a great way to start. It helps you really keep focus and make sure you're moving things in the right direction. Alignment with the C-level objectives through department and or team connects the right focus from leadership and drives the improvements in a quarter in the business. The teams change the business. The teams drive the changes in the business. Leadership sets the direction. So leadership have the tough job of setting the direction, and the teams have the tough job of making the business change and move in the direction the leadership needs it to. Setting good outcomes, key results, and executing plans, projects to drive them is critically important. Multitude of reasons, outcome-based key results show us whether we're successful. They're also engaging, and they tend to make people, they challenge people to think. They don't tell them what to do per se, they tell them what success looks like. And that makes teams work much better and engage with the OKRs and find it more interesting. The last one, and one of the reasons we covered cross-team alignment, is don't let it derail your OKRs. Don't make it the key thing you're trying to achieve. Often alignment will make your OKR setting complicated. At the beginning, learn how to set good OKRs and get the company executing and driving in the direction of the strategy. You can improve on your cross alignments and the settings. We did do a webinar previously. We talked about processes and often the sharing of team OKRs with other teams in the business actually is one of the great ways to create good alignment. If people understand what other teams are working on and why, it helps everybody be a lot more aligned. Also, setting good company level objectives that are well laid out, well structured, will help the teams naturally align. Spending our valuable improvement time wisely will make us successful. The point of using OKRs is really to take that improvement time. It's not everything we're going to fix, but different people and different teams have a different amount of improvement time. How many hours or days in the week do you have to spend driving the business forward? And making sure we set what we're trying to achieve with that improvement time, i.e. OKRs, will make us move the business forward. That is the end of the webinar there. I hope you found that useful. If you do want to contact us, I just want to say hello@weekdone is a generic email, and we also have a weekdone LinkedIn company account. You can also contact me directly, richard@weekdone.com, and this is my LinkedIn as well. Anna, do we have any questions?
Yes, of course we do. And based on our previous session, I'd just like to mention something, and based on the questions that we already received as well, that something like increase the revenue or maintain the best results is not really a strategy. This is something that, I mean, all businesses exist kind of like to make money, otherwise you cannot exist, right? So that's not a strategy. A strategy needs to be a differentiation point. How is this year, 2 years, 5 years going to be different for your company? What is the purpose of everything, right? So this is not an easy question to answer. Hopefully Richard's slides and content today was helpful. If you have more questions, we'd be happy to answer. And I did share quite a few links in the chat, and I think we'll also share them in the email that you will receive along with the recording. That should help you to get a little bit more focused on what needs to be accomplished within a recognizable time frame, right? We'll move on to questions in just 1 second. I wanted to mention that for all of you who want to continue your OKR education and to become an OKR champion in your company, just to gain some practical knowledge and to build an OKR tree of your own, we will be hosting a series of workshops in March, and I will add the link in the chat in a bit as well. So you can take a look, bookmark it for later. No need to go there now, but just open it so that you have it, right? And if you're interested, you can always ask us more questions about that specific series of workshops. Hopefully you will find it helpful. So now let's move on to questions. The first one is, how do you handle objectives that do not fall under the 1-year objectives or quarterly, but take a lot of resources like maintenance or something else? People want credit for their work and for it to be recognized. I think this is a question about business as usual operations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people do, and that doesn't necessarily mean you should absolutely put them into OKRs. There are other ways of getting people to share the big things they're working on, or what are the tools those people use, and how do you get communications? One of the things that, if you read Measure What Matters, you know, the conversations, feedback, recognition, and the sharing of what people are working on is important. It doesn't necessarily exactly fit into the OKR world, where the OKRs are very much about driving improvements. However, maintenance, there could be parts of maintenance that are driving improvements. If something is going to be ongoing, you still might break it down into quarters and say, what is it we want to achieve this quarter? If you can't, it probably isn't an OKR. You would have to think about, how do you get people to share what they've done? there are different ways to do it. Certainly what we do in Weekdone, we get teams to write weekly summaries or to add the major things they're going to accomplish in the week. They can do that and share those things, even if they aren't OKR related. So I get what you mean. It's about setting up the processes to make sure those things are shared, which could be about making sure people can explain it in a weekly team summary, or if you're using like a weekly planning or a bi-weekly planning and sharing across groups, make sure that those things are shared with others so others know what time and effort goes into it. Anna, do you have any comments on that?
I think when it comes up that people want recognition for their work, it already communicates to me that there should be some specific workflows discussed internally, and it may not be necessarily OKR related. I totally agree. And I have a feeling that we might have already a meeting with your company from the person that this question is coming from, Mitch. So this is for you. I think we have a meeting scheduled for this week, so you may want to check with some of your colleagues who attended earlier webinar today. Let's move on for now. If you have a follow-up question, we can discuss it and pick it up a bit later. For now, let's move on to the next question.
Sure.
We have clear outcomes that we want to achieve at the end of the quarter. Where we struggle is turning those outcomes into OKRs. Are there specific steps you recommend? We're kind of working backward into OKRs, I guess, with stated outcomes in hand.
I wouldn't say you're working backwards into it. I think it's quite common that thinking through what do we want to achieve, what are the outcomes we want to drive, the complex part is often how do we measure those outcomes? And it might be one of the things I've often seen work is thinking about what do we do to drive those outcomes and how would we measure success of what we need to do? Meaning not measuring the completion of the project, but what is it the project should actually drive towards the outcome? The outcome should be something that is a change in behavior. Often talk about customer behavior. I personally like I kind of like this, what does success look? How would we know we're successful? What does success look like? If you know what your outcomes are, how would you measure that you're actually successful? Because usually you can. And I think working through what do we do? How would we get there? How would we understand it's improving? It's usually a lot about discussing and thinking. It isn't easy. I think it's one of the hardest things. Good measurable outcome, key results take time and thought to develop. One of the problems often with companies is they don't give the teams and everybody doesn't give themselves enough time to develop good OKRs. And it is kind of important to make sure you've got enough time to reflect on what it is we're trying to achieve and how would we understand that it is improving, that we are driving those outcomes. So I think having the outcomes and working out how do you measure what those outcomes or the measures of success for those outcomes isn't a bad place to be in. I think you'll find a lot of companies struggle, and especially if it's new to you, that it's the biggest, toughest thing to really drive and think about outcomes and measurements of outcomes.
Also, to remind you, I did share some links specifically related to this question as well. So feel free to explore after the webinar. Now, the next question is, can a company work with committed OKRs and aspirational OKRs, or should all OKRs be stretch aspirational ones?
No, both are fine. There's a lot of different thoughts on aspirational or moonshot OKRs. And for some teams, you might get better performance when you put a stretch in there. The reason you're putting the stretch is making people think very differently about the problem. So if I was trying to grow the business 10% or I was trying to double a business, I'd have to think very differently. It makes sense in some cases. In other cases, it really just doesn't make sense. You might actually, if you put a stretched goal on something which nobody in the teams or the company believes you could make that huge jump in, you could actually set things back. I have read a lot of different articles, different opinions by some very well-respected research bodies, and there's a lot of different opinions on this. I think the committed means, yes, we need to achieve it. There's usually a small improvement in there, and those can work. And there's some places that would be a better OKR than a stretch OKR, which might actually have a negative impact on people. So I think it depends on your organization, on the team, on what you're trying to stretch and why you're doing it. Communicating maybe that the stretch is there to make people think differently. We don't know whether it's possible. It's a very different way of communicating it. But both are perfectly fine. And you can have them, you could have a team with two OKRs. One is aspirational and one is basically committed. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
I think it comes back to how much of the work you'll need to do is already figured out and how much of it is new, right? So if it's committed, you sort of know what you need to do and you're pretty confident that you can do it. With aspirational ones, it scares you in a way, like you have no idea how it's going to go. And maybe in a month, you will find out that this was completely unreasonable, or you'll find out that it was even too easy. So there is a lot more uncertainty. And I completely agree. Different teams, they respond to this kind of uncertainty differently. Yeah. And I feel like this question, I think, is coming as a follow-up or maybe even a previous question to the one about the maintenance objectives and all of that. So I think if it's the same kind of question, or at least in the same context, the best way to ensure that you are actually writing the goals that are valuable both for the teams and for others to see what the team is doing, that would be to focus on what you feel defines your success this quarter. That is I don't know, like this is the easiest we can put it probably, right? If your success is defined by something out there that you haven't tried, that's your aspirational OKR. If your success is really defined by a lot of workload that you need to deliver, that you already have, it's not new, but I mean, it's a lot of work, that is fine too. Again, it depends. Completely agree with you, Richard, on that.
Yeah.
We have for now one last question, and I'll go back to Q&A to check if we have anything else that came in while we were talking. So the question is, when we write team OKRs, who owns that? We are a startup, and in our product delivery team, we have 4 full stack developers. We do not have a structure yet or management defined. We are not yet in that level. How do we facilitate that being a small group or a startup where the organization is not so structured? Okay, who owns what?
Good question. There's a few different ways to do it. Some small startup companies will just have one set of OKRs. So basically, everybody owns them. We might have 3 OKRs that are for the company. We don't even set them for teams in a sense. We set them for the company, and everybody in the company is then discussing what are they going to do. So if you think about the initiatives, plans, projects, who's going to do what to drive those OKRs forward? Where you've got that team, so you've got a dev team in this case, as a dev team, as those 4 people, it's probably very much a group effort of setting the OKRs, and it's a group effort of discussing who's going to do what to drive those OKRs forward. I think even when you have team OKRs, the team manager owns it, but still everybody in that team owns those OKRs. It's about collaboration. The point of OKRs is to ensure people collaborate. I think when you try to say one person is responsible, it's not the best way to communicate. All 4 people in that dev team should help set the OKRs, but they're also the ones that are thinking about how do they move them forward.
I think also the technical outcomes, or rather the technical work, needs to be connected to the business outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And if you are at the startup stage, think very carefully how what you think you need to deliver to ship, the features that you need to do or you think you need to do, how it relates to what you want to achieve as a business, right? So that's why actually at the beginning, at the early stage of the startup life cycle, it's actually better to just have one level OKRs. So the structure that Richard was talking about today is more for later stage mature companies. And for startups, just one OKR or 2 or 3 OKRs, don't go more than 3 for sure, but 3 OKRs would actually involve everyone in the team /startup /company, because you are just getting started, right? Plus your OKR cycles might be slightly faster because your priorities might be changing, but still, when you're planning, try to think at least in the quarterly terms, to think, where are we going to be? What do we want to achieve, right? So that you are not changing your priorities every day, because that's, I think, is the biggest problem with startups. We do have one last question that came in as we were speaking. Cool. And okay, that's your favorite one, Richard. What's your opinion on individual OKRs? Or in other words, can we connect individual performance measurement compensation with OKRs?
The simple answer is I hate them. I tell you why. If you think about the superpowers of OKRs for aligning and collaboration and getting people to work together and driving the business forward, a lot of that is about everybody understanding what others are doing, about thinking about what we work on, what are the plans, projects, tasks we do today, this week, next week, to drive the team OKRs forward. What tends to happen when you set personal OKRs, it ends up where, if we're taking those down and aligning them back up to the team, we're basically saying, this is what you do for the quarter. And that, in many ways, stops the collaboration and the teamwork. Everybody's got their pieces of work to do. I think the problem is that people want to do that performance management, and they think OKRs because they're measurable, and they ruin the whole OKR system by doing that, basically. Really, OKRs shouldn't be done for that level of performance management. It was never their purpose. If you read Measure What Matters, chapter 15, it explains very well why it isn't that way and shouldn't be that way, and even gives some examples of some companies that and how they moved away and how it helped them. I think one area is OKRs at the personal level do work at is personal development. So often that's not something that's really connected to compensation, but it can be very beneficial for the company, that I could set an OKR for myself. Hey, I want to improve whatever it is I want to improve, and set measurable outcome key results that show I've actually educated myself or doing something better or whatever it might be. Setting that can work, and that can work very well in organizations. It often helps people develop personally, but it's maybe not really something, again, that's there for this individual performance management or scoring of individuals and how they're working. Things like KPIs can be used for that, certainly in sales teams. I've got a lot of experience on that side. But I think OKRs are best kept out of that individual. I think what you do is you really end up breaking all the benefits of the OKRs. And I think there are better ways to do performance management that aren't related to the OKRs.
The whole point, first of all, I love it, Richard, how you know that it's chapter 15 in Measure What Matters. It's just
it's one of those things that you discuss with a lot of people, and I think one of the problems is there's a lot of bad materials out there, and OKRs, when they became popular, were marketed as the fix-all for everything. OKRs have a very particular place and function, and I think they work exceptionally well for doing what they're meant to do. Yes, you could always manipulate them, change them, and use them for different purposes, but it's not what they were designed for.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that you write OKR, so you turn to this approach to get people to work together. And basically by writing personal OKRs, you would be doing the exact opposite and getting everyone to focus on their own things. So that's not going to work. Yeah. OKRs
are performance management, but they're business performance, not individual performance.
Yeah. For this question, and if you had it also on your mind, even if you didn't ask this question, I did share the link before about the quarterly processes, and that involves how to have the goal setting discussions and what that involves. I think that will be helpful because it puts things into perspective, how to think about goals as a team sport, right? Versus what we individually want to do and what the expectations from the company to us are, right? That is all. We don't have any other questions, but if you do, you see the contacts on the screen. And I'd like to remind you that the last link that I shared in chat is to enroll in the OKR master course that you can take in March to improve your knowledge of OKRs and build your OKR tree within that course. So that might be useful if you're just starting out or want to improve your practical knowledge. I think that is all. Thank you, Richard. It was really great.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for hosting, and thank you everybody for attending. And if you've got any questions, please let us know. We're more than happy to answer. Thanks, and have a great rest of the week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.